that you're willing to come on here and talk, because I think that I'm just really excited to share like your story and what you do, because it's such a fun business that you do. And I also think like, I think it's probably pretty fun for you, but I think it's also pretty fun for the consumer, to get to try out the different things you have. So thanks for doing this.
No, my pleasure.
So I did the math earlier
Okay.
this week, and we've known each other for like basically 20 years.
I know, it's
Isn't that
crazy, right?
insane? I know. I was
Hmm.
thinking, I thought, how could it be 20 years? But it's been 20 years. And you've been doing something within the food industry for almost all of that time, right?
Right. Yeah.
When did you get started?
And I actually, when we were at Purdue, I started taking some hospitality classes and I worked at the student union, baking like muffins from mixes and rolling out cinnamon rolls. I remember anyway, in like the basement of this place. Um, and yeah, I mean, pretty much, I guess so anyway, I was thinking about it. I started like a couple of years into college, really started looking at the food industry from different angles. I worked my summer internship for a small food distributor in St. Louis, which is where I'm from. My stepsister happened to be like best friends with the girl, the woman, and so I learned that side of the business, and then a little bit in college, and then when I went to culinary school is when I really like 100% was committed to seeing what was out there. So
Had culinary school passed your mind when we were in college, or, when you did these different jobs, had it crossed
yeah.
your mind like, oh, I might want to go to culinary school at that point, or was it really after you graduated?
I must have been like maybe junior year. I was talking to someone. I always thought I would go get a master's in something. My degree from Purdue is in math and business, so I always knew I wanted to start my own business. So I felt like I would go get my MBA or something like that. And then I was talking to someone, and they were like, you don't have to get your graduate degree in whatever you did for undergrad, which like put this whole idea in my head that like, oh, if I study, I've already studied business, do I need to study more business necessarily, and what kind of business would I want to have? And so that's when I started looking at culinary schools. So when I was graduating from Purdue, I was interviewing for jobs and also looking at culinary school just to kind of see what would be the better option for me. So
Got it. Okay, that's interesting. So then where did you go to culinary school at?
So I went to a school called Johnson and Wales, which they have a campus. Their main campus is in Providence, Rhode Island, but I actually went to school in Denver, Colorado. They had a program specifically for people that already had a bachelor's degree. So it was, I think, 18 months through, straight through. But it was also, I liked the fact that it was all people, like I wouldn't be going to school with like a 18-year-old. Granted, I was only 22 at the time, but I
Yeah.
liked that there was like a maturity level to it. And then so I actually ended up getting an associate's degree. I kind of went backwards, but so I have an associate's degree in culinary arts. So the people in the class, there were quite a few like me who had just finished undergrad and wanted to learn that side of it. And then there were a few sort of like career changers who at our age now were going back to school to decide to do something different. So anyway, so that was in Colorado, and it's a lot of fun in Colorado. It's probably maybe like California. People like are there for the mountains and to play. But at some point, I realized I really wanted to, like, in my mind, learn from the best. So that's when I moved to New York
Okay.
City.
Okay. And when you went to New York City, did you already have a job when you headed, or you said, I think New York City has the best, I'm going to go there and find them?
Yeah, it was in the middle. I was
Okay.
totally naive, I think is maybe the right word, to like how the system worked here, how the industry was, because I was expecting, to get the industry has changed a lot, but like the pay rate and how people paid you, and it's just like was so far from what I was used to in Colorado, getting like an hourly rate for the hours that you worked. It was like more like a salaried type position where you
Okay.
were like
Like
paid by the
crazy hours.
day.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you worked I mean, you didn't work 5 hours. You were either
Yeah.
working, 10 or 12
Okay.
or that kind of hours.
Okay. Okay.
But I actually had the luxury. I lived with Barry and Tova for like 3 months when I first moved
Oh,
to New York.
nice.
So I had the luxury of not paying rent for a few months while I found a job. And then I think it was about 3 months. Eventually moved into the city and, started from there. So
Okay. That,
yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I often wonder, and especially I think I'm thinking young people, but it's not just young people. It's anyone who's kind of trying to make a big change. And you think of a place like New York City or any city, that idea of finding someone that you might be able to stay with for a few months is super smart to be able
yeah,
to kind of ease into it without having huge bills like right off the
right.
bat.
Hmm.
um it's funny, it's making me think of, it's bringing up this memory of mine that for some reason I associate with you too. But when I had moved to London way, like maybe when I was like 21, and I went with $1,000 in my bank account, and on day 3 my bank account was empty, and I was it was a mess. It was a mess. But I was thinking that for some reason, I have this vague memory of you and London and Covent Garden. And I was
Oh,
trying
really?
to remember if you and I were together there at the same time, but I don't physically remember seeing you. But you spent some
No.
time in London at some point, right?
Right. I did. Right before, well, let's see. It was right when I was getting married. So it was like 2011. My husband's job transferred him to London. So we moved there like the month after we got married. And so we're there for almost 2 years. So yeah, I did spend time in London, but I don't think we were there together.
No,
So that's interesting.
it is. We must have just exchanged emails, and you must have
Yeah.
talked about, it's funny, maybe you talked about hanging out in Covent Garden or something, and I was
Yeah.
able to picture it, and somehow that came in my memory. I don't know. I don't know.
When I first moved there, I worked at this. It was like a restaurant cafe. Anyway, I looking back, it was the worst. But at the time, I was in a new place and it seemed like a great company and whatever. But it was right off Covent Garden, so maybe that's where it all
Okay.
came in.
Okay. Okay. So it's probably just
Yeah,
my memory as me imagining you there living this.
unless you like traveled there later,
I
but
don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It's
yeah,
weird. It's probably just my imagination of you,
yeah,
living this, like you said, at the time seems like this amazing life in another
yeah,
country working at a restaurant. It's like a
yeah.
little cafe off the streets. It's like,
Seems nice.
yeah, yeah. So how long were you working in New York City? So you worked in different restaurants in different kitchens, right?
Yeah,
And I say different. Did you move around to a few different places, or were you in the same place most of the time?
I had like three big restaurant jobs in New York, so like three main ones. So I started working for Danielle Boulud, and it's called DB Bistro. So it's like a casual bistro, and that was my first job when I moved here, knowing nothing. But he has a lot of different restaurants. So working for him, that was the place that I mostly worked, but I kind of got to see other things that were going on. From there, I moved to a place called 11 Madison Park, which is fine dining. So it's like a completely, I don't want to say completely different, but a much different pace. And I learned that fine dining is not my favorite thing to do, but you know, you
Live
you
and learn.
learn.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
all a learning experience. So after that experience, I wanted to take a break from the kitchen. So those are my only two jobs in the kitchen, and then I worked at Bouchon Bakery, managing everything but the kitchen, I like to say. So the retail staff, and we had a cafe, and just like ordering and all of that. So I was learning the business side of things, because in the end I knew that I wanted to start something of my own. So I was trying
Mm,
to get as much experience as I
mm.
could on all sides of the business.
Yeah, that it's super smart. And I think it's neat to hear, you started in your undergrad with business, and then you did the culinary school, and then you did the different culinary jobs, knowing that you always wanted to marry the two of them together. And so then
Right.
you started your own business when? When did you start Julie's Beet?
Julie's Beet officially started, like, well, I launched the website in 2015. So I left my job in like beginning of 2011, thinking of starting my business then. But then, as I said before, my husband got moved to London. So I kind of put everything on hold because I decided that I couldn't just like pick up my business plan from New York and like plop it down in London,
Mm-hmm.
which London and New York are a lot the same, but they're also a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so that was a good plan
Okay.
in
Okay.
retrospect. And working there, I actually worked at a chocolate company. I worked for a chocolate company called Rococo Chocolates. And so I learned about chocolate, which is something I'd never done pastry because I felt like it was so technical and like
Mm.
you had to really measure everything. Whereas when you're cooking more savory food, you put a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and like hopefully it
Okay.
tastes good. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
baking, it's like really precise, and chocolate is like even more so. So I
Okay.
learned how to do that, and I learned there. I realized how important online business is. The company there's the woman that founded it, she was like 25 when she started it and had this like dream of chocolate, and so made this chocolate shop. And as the company grew, learning about what was new and different. So there I realized how important it would be to have an online presence, so to speak, which is so important now that like I hadn't really thought about, just even like 18 months prior.
Mm.
So I moved back to New York. I started putting the gears in motion to start Julie's Beet. I moved back to New York 6 months pregnant. So I had my first son, of all of them.
First
The
son of
first of
four.
four. And once and then once I felt like I had a hand on that, I really started spending more time on the business. So he was about a year old when I officially launched
Got
Julie's Beet.
it. Got
So
it. Okay. Okay. And Julie's Beet is your first business, right?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
it is.
Okay. And so you had put together the business plan. So I think you just said 6 months prior to coming back from London, you kind of started to think about this is like how I'm going to do this.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
In retrospect, I had so much free time that I didn't realize I had, not having a family at that point in time, that I was like, why didn't I do so much more to get myself ready? But, it's all relative at that time.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's interesting to have discovered the importance of online business all the way back in 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously right now it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit, everyone has realized the importance of it, but it seems like, were you a little bit ahead of the curve on recognizing that? Or do you feel like within the food industry, online was growing at that point?
I, I like to think I was slightly ahead of the curve. Also with like getting into food, when I went to culinary school, it wasn't like it is now, I don't think. I mean, now it's like, even with social media, I think, Instagram, and people are taking pictures of foods and restaurants and all of this that didn't exist, 20 years ago when we
Mhm.
graduated from college. And so I think it's
Mhm.
totally changed. The Food Network was around, but now there's like multiple food channels. So just like, I like to think I was a little ahead of the curve on all of those things. So,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, I mean, I don't think Julie's Beet is definitely something that exists in other forms. So it wasn't a completely, it's like people are selling food online, but just in a different, I guess, a different manner or
Mm.
thing. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or like maybe a lot of brands are kind of selling their own food, but I think what's so
Right.
neat about Julie's Beet is that you pick and choose very, it's clear that you have tight criteria around how you handpick various artisans that you carry within your shop. And you mentioned Rococo, I'm probably saying it wrong, but
Yeah.
Rococo chocolates. So you
Right.
actually worked for them in London, and I know that they're
Right.
I personally buy that
Yes.
chocolate from you and love it. So Rococo, I know, is one of the small brands that you carry, but what's cool about Julie's Beet is that you're actually curating different tiny brands that I feel like, at least me, I would have never known about without purchasing
Right.
them through you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea or kind of the nature, even the tagline, is like culinary gems from around the world. So we are looking for that special thing that you're not going to find everywhere. Like the chocolate, for example, is widely available in London and throughout England, but isn't widely available in the U.S. And it was actually really important to me when I left there, when I came back to New York, knowing that what I was doing, I said, I'm not exactly sure how Rococo chocolates would be a part of what I'm doing, but I really wanted to be a part of it because they had sort of dipped their toes in the US market, but it's hard. And again, like going back to the difference between the US and the UK, it's, more than what you can see, or it seems like we all speak English and it should be very similar, but it's not. So it was nice to have the trust of the owners and then bring that here and like be able to share it with a much broader population. So actually the first, I think I started with 4 brands, and they were all either someone that I knew, or it was like a friend of a friend that I had like a very personal connection to, because I wanted it to be something, what makes my business unique is me. So,
Mm.
and so I'm trying to put that into play in everything that I'm selecting.
Mm. Yeah, I
So,
agree. I agree. And it seems to me like what makes your business unique is you and the people that you carry. It's
yeah.
those first 4. Do you remember who they were? I'm interested to hear who
Yeah.
your first 4 were.
So Rococo chocolates, and then I have a good friend. His name's Lior Lefserkars. So he makes spice blends. So it's called the Bois spices. Um, and then I have Gus and Gray Jam. She's out of Detroit, but she also used to work for Danielle Boulud many years ago in New York, and so that's how I was connected with her. And then it's called Five Olive Oil, and so that was like a friend of mine is Greek, and this was his friend in Greece who was starting this new olive oil brand, and so that's how I got that one. So those were the first 4, and I still carry all of them. I've learned through the years, when you only have 4 brands, I carried a wide range of each of those brands, but as I've added more artisans, I've streamlined what I offer from each one. So I really have like the best of what they're making. And so they're still very much a part of what I'm doing, but just, might look like it's smaller, but it's more just, again, like curating and selecting what the right product is.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. And I love how it all started. I guess so simply, it
Yeah.
wasn't simple. I mean, you put together like a business plan and you had a really clear plan, but I love that you were able to start with, people you knew and begin to like tiptoe into this and then allow it to grow over time into bringing in all of the
Right.
other artisans.
Yeah.
It I feel like it's inspiring for someone who may just be sitting on an idea, any idea. It's like leveraging the people around you that is really a nice way to kind of tiptoe into something, I think. So it seems like you were able to do that, which is pretty awesome.
Thank you. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it helped knowing like that I was selling, like some of the brands were already pretty established, but just in different areas. But so knowing that that person trusted me with their product helped push that
Mm.
along, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. So,
Yeah, because you were able to provide them value too. It was like
yeah.
a win-win for both sides, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you've grown now to carry a bunch of different artisans. How do you
Right.
decide if someone is going to make it into the Julie's Beet store or not?
Well, it's a lot of tasting. I'm kind of on the lookout, especially when I travel. I think we're like a little New York heavy, which makes sense in that I live in New York City and there are a lot of creative people here making a lot of wonderful things. But if I'm going to a farmer's market in California, or especially like when I go home to Indiana, I like to look around
Mm.
there to find something that's like small and unique. Every year there's twice a year, it's called the Fancy Food Show. So it's like all gourmet food products, from around the world really um, come to for like a huge convention, and
Right.
it's interesting to go around and like thousands of vendors, and some from everything from, I mean, some of them are so big that I'm like, how, like ketchup, how is, I don't know if it's Heinz, but like
Uh-huh.
somebody that big, you're like, how is that gourmet? So that I don't know exactly how the rules are made, but in the past few years they have what they call like, well, they have like a incubator alley, so like people that are working in like
Okay.
shared kitchens and that sort of thing. So it's like small that they don't even have their own production and like new items. So I really have, before I go to the show now, really like kind of scour the catalog and figure out who the new-ish brands are, and that's kind of my target audience. So I'm going, and a lot of time, people want to tell you how they're in Whole Foods. Everybody wants to be in Whole Foods, but I don't necessarily want the product that's in Whole Foods. I
Mm.
want something that
Mhm.
is actually not in Whole Foods. I know that like
Mhm.
Whole Foods is definitely a benchmark for a lot of people because they are very particular about what they choose. But once you're in Whole Foods, then you become more of a mass market. And I think it loses some of the personal appeal. Just,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
you were talking before about telling a story, and that is sort of how I feel every product that I sell has a story, and that's part of my job, is to pass that story along to the people that are purchasing it. Now, online business does provide its challenges because I have had some products that, if I'm doing in New York, I had a small retail space which is closed now, but would have open houses and people could come in and taste. And some of the products, definitely, like all the beautiful sauces that people are making, it's a little bit hard to sell those online because you can't really taste it. But when someone would come in and we open it and they would taste it, that sort of thing would really sell. So it's finding the balance of like beautiful products, but also something that will sell. So
Mhm.
I've had some misses. I've had some hits, and it's just and it is hard being a small business owner and working with small businesses and artisans who I know love the products that they're creating.
Mhm.
But it's also a business. So at some point you have to kind of move on
Mhm.
from the ones that don't ring true. I tried these
Mhm.
almonds at this food show, ranch salad almonds. So it was like
Mm.
almonds with ranch seasoning
Okay.
on them,
Uh-huh.
which I thought were like the most amazing thing. Well, it's better than like ranch salad dressing, and then you have like an almond, and it's like a shelf stable snack. But I don't think I sold one bag of them. So I was like, okay, like I
Mm.
loved it, but it
Mhm.
just isn't for my
Yeah.
audience. So anyway,
Yeah.
so there's some of that going on too.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I'm sure it's a hard balance, and I'm sure it's exciting to go find the new ones, but
Right,
then also like such a hard balance to make sure that it's a constant mix that is something people will purchase, because
right.
they need to purchase it for you to stay in business and continue
Mhm.
to highlight artisans, right? It's kind of like
Right.
to keep the wheel moving. You kind of have to
Mhm.
do that. You know, I
Right.
um I think that is, to me, one of the things that makes your business unique is the stories behind all of the foods. I know we'll purchase gift boxes, for friends. Like say we stay at somebody's house and we want to send a thank
Okay.
you, or someone's having a baby, or whatever. It's
Right.
fun to, I feel like you kind of put together like the perfect gift box for people, and then I buy one for myself every year at the end of the
Yeah.
year because, well, why not?
Why
But
not?
it's I find personally that every single time we eat something from one of your boxes, we stop, we take the time to really appreciate it. We read the story. The food just feels special. It's almost like
Yeah.
it turns into this kind of, I don't know, ritual slash special experience to eat the food. And I think that there's something to be said for that moment where you're consciously knowing what you're eating and appreciating it for everywhere it's been and who it came from, and
Right.
to me that's also something unique that Julie's Beet offers, is that experience for people when they do order your stuff.
Mhm. I give a lot of gifts from my own site, which you can imagine. but like family friend from school hosted an event for, I'm a class parent for my son's class, and so I dropped off a package. And anyway, so thank you so much. And I had given her our tomato sauce, and she was like, I'm a red sauce person, so I can't wait to try it. But anyway, she texted me that night, like, it's so good, like how being a chef or being trained in the culinary field, it is hard to find a packaged product that tastes fresh and delicious as
Mm.
something that you
Mm.
make at home. And so I
Mhm.
think that is part of like what I'm looking to provide also. I have the hardest time finding cookies to sell because nothing tastes as good as
Mm.
fresh out of the oven or like from the fresh bakery. So I
Uh-huh.
struggle with that part of
Mhm.
my website. But one of the things that I do love to do, like I mentioned, I dropped off this gift set for this parent or whatever, is everything's available individually. So like you get the gift box and you love the tomato sauce and maybe you didn't care for the olives that were in it or whatever it is, but you can come back and just get that
Mm.
sauce because a
Mhm.
lot of gift boxes or gift sets that people are sending out, it's just the set, and then you're kind of stuck trying to figure out where
Mm.
you're going to
That's
find
true.
that product
Mhm.
that you really really loved but like can only get as a set of you know
Mm.
so
That's true. Yeah, that's
so
definitely true. I've never actually thought about it until you said that, but for sure, usually when you get some sort of gift box, it's kind of like, "Oh, this is amazing," but yeah, that was it.
yeah,
It's like never
it's
gonna have it
over.
again.
The experience is
Yeah,
over.
exactly. Yeah, that's cool. And I gotta imagine there's like a lineup of contests to be to have you be the room mom or to
Oh.
have you be a part of these organizations. I'm like, that's a pretty cool bonus.
Yeah, yeah,
So
to
funny.
bring some food. Our school has a policy against giving gifts to teachers, and so one of my anyway, with 4 kids, we've been there for a little while, but
Mhm.
one of my son's teachers was like, "You always bring chocolate to like, they have some classes for like toddlers, like before school,
Okay.
like
Uh-huh.
preschool classes." So
Okay.
I always bring like chocolate to those teachers because I feel like it's not really their teacher and it's part of school.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, one of the teachers was like, "I don't really consider food a gift. So like if you wanted to
So
bring some."
anytime.
So I
So
dropped a
true.
box of or a set of chocolate off on her desk one day and I was like, "I'm not sure how it got there, but if you guys want to enjoy it, you can have
That's
it."
awesome. That's
So
awesome. I love it. Yeah, that's super
everybody likes
cool.
chocolate.
I know that you take a lot of time to cook meals
Yeah.
and feed your family kind of nourishing food every week. I know that because I see you post pictures on Instagram and talk about like all these amazing things that you're making all the time. And I know part of it is obviously being a chef, having the background, within culinary arts, but also, you mentioned you have 4 boys and
Right. Yeah.
you have this business and you're a wife, you have a lot of different hats that you wear. And it's pretty amazing that you have time to cook
Cook.
meals throughout the week. And so I wondered if you talk a little bit about how you do that and maybe why you've continued to make it a priority in your life.
Yeah. So I can say, well, yeah, I obviously love to cook because that is what, and in working in restaurants and things, like for me, it was always about providing something that people, you have a lot of memories around the food that you eat or when you're celebrating, if it's a special meal and whatever. And that's sort of how I got into the business. So cooking for my own family seems like an obvious choice, but when I was working in restaurants, like if I was always cooking savory food, I never really wanted to cook that at home because I'm cooking it all day long. So I would bake a lot. Now I'm not cooking all day long. So I feel like when I get home, I want to cook. I don't know. I guess
Mm.
maybe that's like my outlet, like to do something that I know that I love. I definitely don't have the time that I used to have. We don't eat as the gourmet. I mean, the meals are nice and I'm using
Mhm.
fresh food and fresh ingredients. I cook all the time with products from the website. We have recipes on there. So I'm always sort of recipe testing and providing
Mm.
new ways to use the things that we have. But yeah, it's a lot of preparing ahead. So and I like to say it comes from the days when I first started working in restaurant kitchens. When you leave for the night, for example, like I would work a lunch at a restaurant and then somebody else comes, then there's a dinner, people come and eat dinner. So you're not quite sure you never know what people are going to order and what they're going to use, like the person that's working at night. And so I always try to have as much ready sort of the night before that I can. And I kind of do the same thing when I'm cooking for my family. So if I can make something the night before, like a braised meat dish that just has to be heated in the oven the next night, then it works really well for my family because I can just throw it in the oven. My husband and I usually eat after the kids, so they'll have like the meal the next day or whatever. So I can put it in the oven while I'm putting the kids to bed, and then we can eat it. And it's not like I'm reheating leftovers, so to speak. I think I said, I used to see how people, when they like got their groceries, they'd come home and they'd like wash all the greens and chop up all the vegetables. And I was like, it doesn't take so long to chop up vegetables. But now I find myself doing that. And I don't know if it's just in New York City, but there's this whole business that people have built, like personal chefs around like sort of like a meal prep where they come into your house and they like prep all your meals for the week. So I find I'm doing my own sort of meal prep of like menu planning and cutting things up so that if I'm sauteing some vegetables, they're already ready to go. And so I can make them. We do, my husband works late during the week, so he's not home for dinner when the kids are eating, but on Sundays we all sit down together.
Okay.
So, which is tricky because I do have some picky eaters and some not so picky eaters. So it's like trying to find a meal that will make everyone happy. So anyway, last week, actually, I made hot dogs and like, I made my husband and I like a kielbasa sausage and coleslaw and like French fries. And that was like one of the most successful meals we've had in a long time. Like everybody
awesome.
sat down and they ate. It's not like super gourmet, but it was like a home cooked meal that we could all like appreciate together and kind of came together quickly, or two.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hardest thing that I find for me is getting my son to eat. It's my daughter, she'll eat most things that I make and she'll kind of say, can I just eat one like serving of it? And then can I have, something else? But my son, oh my gosh, hands down every single night, he walks in and he looks and he goes, bleh, like every single time. And I'm just like, and so I do worry about him, honestly, because I just don't feel that he's eating like a good, getting the nutrition he needs. But at the same time, the rest of us, have to get the nutrition that we need. So I definitely understand what you're saying. And I have two. I can't imagine four. It's like double the difficulty.
The one child, my one son is particularly challenging, but I have a policy that I will not cook something different for him. But if he wants to eat like leftover pasta I'll warm it up for him, but I'm not going to like cook a fresh batch of pasta or like he likes hard boiled eggs. So I always have like those around. So I have something that I know that he'll like, but I have stopped like preparing an entirely different meal.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much.
It is. And it's exhausting. Like there's been times that, he walks in and you've been cooking for the past like hour and a half and he's like, bleh. And you're just like, go to your room. No, I'm just kidding. But it's like, I'm like, I'm not making you anything. You can either eat this or not eat. But that's backfiring because he's like, not eat.
Or grab some goldfish crackers from the pantry.
Right. Well, that's what he wants. Like, okay, I'll just have chips. Like, no, you won't. But yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
Well, my kids do come to work with me sometimes, so they have an appreciation for fine chocolate because they know which bar they want to go grab. I like to joke that I pay my child labor with chocolate, so they go and they find that special one. So at least I can know that the chocolate that they're eating is not totally, just filled with junk. It's like real chocolate and real, sugar and butter and all those things. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that's awesome. I mean, have you found at all that they have any more appreciation even for the other kinds of food that you sell just because of seeing it there,
They do. Like I have this Yeah, I think when they see it on the shelf, and then sometimes we bring it home. We have this pasta. She's actually from LA. It's called Semolina artisanal pasta.
Okay.
It's like she's in Pasadena, so
Okay.
I don't know how near or
Not
far
far
that is
from
to
me.
you.
Not far from me at
Okay.
all. Yeah.
Um, and I found her at a fancy food show when she was like first starting, and her thing was her kids. She wanted to make organic, I think, pasta for her children, and she couldn't find it anywhere. So she started this pasta company, and I actually didn't think that they would like it because it's like, it's not the
Mhm.
run of the
Yeah.
mill stuff, but it's
Yeah.
actually one of their favorites. My husband commented the other night, like how well they say strozza pasta because it's like it's very specific shape.
Mm.
But anyway, they love it. So I think part of seeing it with me allows them
Mhm.
to like have maybe
More of
it's
an
more
appreciation.
special. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love
So
that.
it's good.
Yeah, that is definitely anything that will help them eat something and appreciate their food
Yeah.
is good. Um, I'd like to wrap up the conversations with one simple idea, and it's my thought around that is that I think living consciously sometimes can feel pretty overwhelming if you're trying to do everything right and you're trying to do everything perfect. And, when it comes to food, my goodness, it can definitely, be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I wonder what you would share to the people who are listening as one simple idea to bridge into either cooking or eating more consciously, taking the time for it, and just making it a part of their life to be more conscious about what they cook and what they eat.
For me, I think it's all about keeping it local and small, if you will. So, when you're traveling, especially, and for myself too, I like to seek out kind of off the beaten path, so to speak. So, like instead of going to Starbucks, I would go to sort of I don't the
Mhm.
more artisan coffee shop
Mhm.
and kind of looking to in that direction, even at the supermarket or whatever, finding the products that are in season, kind of again like kind of keeping it local. It's going to have a better flavor. You don't necessarily have to do so much to it to make it
Mhm.
taste good.
Mhm.
And just having a few kind of key ingredients at home, like if you have a really good olive oil and salt and maybe a spice blend, whatever piece of meat or vegetable that you pick up from your grocery store automatically is elevated without you really doing a lot to it. So you just add a splash of this and a sprinkle of that, and you've taken even just for example like an avocado. And maybe I've like spoiled myself, but you can eat an avocado and it tastes delicious, but if you sprinkle it with like some, salt
Mm.
and a little drizzle of really delicious olive oil, like all of a sudden you've taken something and made it special. And
Mm.
tomatoes in the summer, like, don't even get me started because they're like, but only in the summer, right? So it's like, I guess that kind of goes with the eating local and like keeping it to what is available to you in that time and area so that you can find
Mm.
what's really great. And
Yeah.
like, and with your family, taking them, if I walk through there's a farmer's market in our neighborhood. And I always say, anything that you want to try, I will get for you, especially for my
Mm.
picky son, because if he wants to pick up an apple, like that is amazing, and try it or whatever. My one son always wants to get peppers, but I don't, and he'll like take a bite and move on. But at least he's like chosen it and he picked it
Mm.
out and he tried it and like we can all, So anyway, so that would be
Yeah.
my advice. And so just, while it's easier to shop from the big guys and maybe find the more larger established brands when you're out
Mhm.
and eating, it's nice to kind of take a step back and slow down and I think
Mm.
it becomes more special in that way. So
Yeah, I agree.
there you go.
I think there's a lot to be said for when you're grabbing something from the store, like consciously choosing that one thing, and then
Yeah.
it comes definitely in the farmers market, like you're describing. I love that idea of letting the kids try what they want to try, because I think just that experience of talking to the person running the booth and
Mhm.
just physically being there, there's a lot to be said for I guess that energy that comes in through your food that you might not, it doesn't happen as much when you just go grab the same thing off the shelf that you always grab and you don't really give much thought to it.
Yeah.
I like
Mhm.
that. I like that. And I also love what you said about seasonality, something that I think when we lived in Tokyo, it was just by culture, so much of the food was season specific. And so you got
Yeah.
really excited for when the spring came around and these certain foods came out. And then in the summer, other foods would come out and you couldn't get them any other time of the year.
Right.
And I remember, saying to Sean, my husband, saying, this is so neat how excited we're getting over a specific food because it's that season. You get excited for that season to come, you get excited for that food to come, and it's a limited time, you can't get it. And I feel like at least I grew up that way. We didn't have
Right.
everything we wanted at any given time at our fingertips. Like you said, like tomatoes were a certain season, other vegetables were a certain season.
Yeah.
And and I remember like saying to Sean in Tokyo, like, this is so cool. Like we're actually noticing
Yeah.
foods again, noticing like seasons, noticing,
Yeah.
and part of that is, I'm sure, when you live someplace where you don't have seasons, that also but
Adds to it. Yeah.
yeah, like LA. But I think that for sure there's a lot to be said for relishing products that are fresh in their specific season.
Yeah.
So I love all of those ideas you shared, and I think that they're things that I can try in my life. So I'm sure others will too. So, um, what are you most excited about now?
Like, what product am I most
Mm,
excited about, or just
Just
in general?
in general.
In general, that's a tough one. I'm excited about sleep because I have 4 young children, but when I can't sleep, I do, have to eat well. So, I mean, I have a sweet tooth. So at the end of the day, I like sweets.
Mm.
We've been doing, like, at-home cooking projects right now for my son's school. So yesterday we made chocolate chip scones. They
Oh,
weren't
wow.
so great, but just, like, the idea that we're getting together and we're baking, and then I have
Yeah.
something sweet to eat after that. So sweets
Yeah.
are my weakness,
Mm.
and being able to make them with my family is great. So I would say
Yeah.
that's what I'm excited about right now.
I love that. I love it.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
So
awesome. So, where is the best spot for people to find you?
online is I mean, our website is juliesbeet.com. That's where you can find us, and there's links there. All of our products are there. We do gift sets. You can email. We're on social media, but the website's the best place to go if you need anything.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. And I
Okay.
just want to note for people that it's Beet spelled Beet, like the food. So
Yes.
www.juliesbeet.com, right?
Come.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Hmm.
Perfect. So if anybody's listening without, pen and paper, you've got it. Julie's
Okay.
Beet. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Julie, for being on. It's been so much fun to talk to
Yeah.
you and just hear about your adventures and your business and all of the people that you support. I think what you're doing is just super awesome, and I think you're doing something that's really important in the world right now, to be featuring all of these small artisans and bringing that food to more people. So thank you for being
Okay.
here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.